The crystalline spires of the galactic assembly stretched toward the violet skies of Centauri Prime, their surfaces refracting starlight in complex patterns that seemed to mock the relatively simple environmental suits of the human delegation. Dr. Sarah Chen adjusted her suit's atmosphere regulator, trying to appear unfazed by the towering Aetherian guards whose bioluminescent markings pulsed with barely concealed disdain. "Your species has barely mastered stable fusion." High Chancellor Lyssandra's voice resonated through the chamber, her crystalline form shifting through shades of deep blue to violet. "Yet you dare petition for full membership in the Assembly." The gathered Aetherian dignitaries vibrated in harmony with their leader's frequencies, creating a symphony of dismissive tones. Ambassador James Patel stood firm, his dark eyes reflecting the determination that had driven humanity to the stars. "With respect, Chancellor, humanity has achieved in 3 centuries what took other species millennia: our adaptability and innovation." "Speak to us of innovation when your kind can breathe our air without those crude mechanisms," Lysandra interrupted, her upper appendages weaving patterns of light that translated to sophisticated amusement in Aetherian body language. "The Assembly has stood for 50,000 years under Aetherian guidance. We perfected quantum engineering while your ancestors huddled in caves." Dr. Chen bit back a sharp retort, her hands instinctively tightening on her data tablet. As the delegation's xenolinguistics expert, she had spent years studying Aetherian culture and language. Something about their claimed history had never quite added up, but she couldn't place what. The meeting continued its predictable path toward rejection, but Chen's mind wandered to the ruins she'd been studying on Proxima. The ancient structures there bore markings that didn't quite match known Aetherian scripts, despite their claims of linguistic purity and unchanged writing systems over 50 millennia. "Perhaps," Chen spoke up suddenly, causing the Aetherian council members to shift their crystalline forms toward her in surprise, "the Chancellor would be interested in explaining the variations we've documented in pre-assembly era Aetherian writing systems." The chamber's temperature dropped several degrees as Lysandra's form darkened to a deep indigo. "Dr. Chen, is it? Your species' attempt to analyze our sacred texts is both presumptuous and flawed. Our language, like our civilization, has remained pure and unchanged since the awakening. Then you won't mind if we continue our archaeological studies on Proxima." Chen pressed, noting how several younger Aetherians in the chamber shifted to frequencies indicating interest rather than dismissal. "The ruins are now restricted," Lysandra declared, "for their own preservation, of course. This audience is concluded. The Assembly's decision remains. Humanity will continue under probationary status until you demonstrate sufficient advancement." As the delegation was escorted out, Ambassador Patel turned to Chen. "Sarah, what was that about? We were supposed to be diplomatic." "James, I need you to get me unrestricted access to the Assembly's linguistic archives," Chen replied, her eyes bright with purpose. "I think I found something in those ruins, something they don't want us to see. The patterns I've been documenting. They share fundamental similarities with ancient human writing systems, particularly Proto-Indo-European scripts." "That's impossible," Patel whispered. "The Aetherians evolved on the other side of the galaxy." "Exactly," Chen said, pulling up a holographic comparison on her tablet. "So why do their oldest texts contain mathematical patterns identical to human linguistic evolution? Something doesn't add up about their claims of isolation and supremacy." "Dr. Chen," a melodic voice called from behind them. They turned to find a young Aetherian, their form shifting through shades of green that indicated both anxiety and excitement. "I am Zara Val, junior researcher in comparative xenolinguistics. Your observations about pattern variations, they match my own studies. Studies I've been discouraged from pursuing." Chen's heart raced. "Would you be willing to share your findings?" "It would be forbidden." Zara Val's form flickered uncertainly. "But perhaps it is time for forbidden knowledge to come to light. Meet me at the Archives of Dawn in 3 cycles. Bring your data." As they boarded their shuttle back to the human embassy, Patil gripped Chen's shoulder. Sarah, if you're right about this, then everything they've told us about their history, about our place in the galaxy, might be a lie. Chen finished, and I think some of them already know it. The shuttle lifted off into the violet sky, leaving behind a civilization built on 50,000 years of carefully maintained myths. In her mind, Chen was already plotting the coordinates of every ancient ruin humanity had discovered, seeing patterns in their distribution that had nothing to do with random chance and everything to do with a hidden truth that could reshape the galaxy. The Archives of Dawn lived up to their name, a towering structure of living crystal that caught the first light of Centauri Prime's binary stars each morning. Dr. Sarah Chen waited in a shadowed alcove, her environmental suit's readings confirming she was alone. The 3 cycles since the assembly meeting had passed in a blur of research and mounting anticipation. A shimmer of green light announced Zoraval's arrival, the young Aetherian's crystalline form vibrating with nervous energy. Dr. Chen, I apologize for the secrecy, but what I'm about to show you, it goes against everything our council claims about our history. They moved deeper into the archives, passing through chambers filled with crystalline data matrices that held millennia of Aetherian knowledge. Zoraval led them to a section that seemed older, the crystal structures showing subtle signs of age that Chen's trained eye caught immediately. These are the first songs, Zoraval explained, their form shifting to frequencies that indicated deep reverence. Our oldest recorded historical documents, predating the assembly itself. Watch. The young Aetherian interfaced with a crystal matrix, and suddenly the chamber filled with flowing symbols of light. Chen's breath caught in her throat. The patterns were unmistakably similar to those she documented in the ruins on Proxima, but here they were in pristine condition, their mathematical precision preserved perfectly in the crystal. This is impossible, Chen whispered, her tablet frantically recording everything. These symbols, they follow the same quantum harmonic principles as ancient Sanskrit and Sumerian cuneiform. The mathematical odds against parallel evolution producing identical linguistic patterns are astronomical. A new voice finished. Both Chen and Zoraval spun to find another Aetherian emerging from the shadows, their form a deep purple that marked them as a senior scholar. Chen's hand tightened on her tablet, but the Aetherian raised an appendage in what she recognized as a peaceful gesture. I am Nexus 4, Chief Archivist of the Dawn. They introduced themselves, and I have spent 3 centuries studying these inconvenient truths that our council wishes to forget. Zoraval's form flickered with surprise. Master Archivist, you know about the patterns. Know about them. I've dedicated my life to understanding them. Nexus 4 moved closer to the glowing symbols. Our people claim we achieved spaceflight 50,000 years ago through pure, isolated development. But these records tell a different story, one of contact, collaboration, and a civilization that spanned the stars long before the assembly existed. Chen's mind raced as she compared the floating symbols to her own research. The ruins on Proxima, they're not just Aetherian, are they? They're remnants of this older civilization, one that included both our peoples and others. Nexus 4 confirmed, but something happened. A catastrophe that shattered that ancient unity. Most records were lost, but these first songs survived, preserved in our crystal matrices. We forgot their true meaning, reinterpreting them to support our myths of superiority and isolation. But why maintain the lie? Chen asked. Why deny this shared heritage? Power. Zoraval's form shifted to frequencies indicating disgust. Our entire society is built on the belief that we achieved everything alone, that we are natural leaders of lesser species. To admit we were once equals, perhaps even junior partners in a greater civilization. A distant alarm suddenly pierced the quiet of the archives. Nexus 4's form pulsed with urgency. The Security Council. They monitor access to these sections more closely than we thought. Dr. Chen, you must leave. But take this. The archivist pressed a small crystal into her hand. It contains copies of the first songs and my research. The mathematical proof of our shared origins is there, if one knows how to read it. Zaraval, and I will delay them. They'll know you helped me, Chen protested. Perhaps it's time some truths came to light. Nexus 4's form shifted to a resolute gold. Go! The younger generation must know their true heritage. The lies have gone on long enough. Chen fled through back passages Zaraval had shown her, the crystal clutched tightly in her hand. Behind her, she could hear the harmonic resonance of security forces converging on the archive chamber. She made it to her waiting shuttle just as alerts began blaring across the city's crystal spires. As they broke atmosphere, Chen carefully interfaced her tablet with the crystal, her eyes widening as she absorbed its contents. The mathematical proofs were elegant, undeniable, and completely devastating to Etherian claims of supremacy. But it was more than that. Hidden in the patterns of the first songs were coordinates, star maps pointing to other ruins, other pieces of humanity's forgotten connection to the Etherians. Sarah, Ambassador Patel's voice crackled over the comm. Security forces are demanding we turn you over for questioning. What did you find? Chen stared at the streams of ancient symbols flowing across her screen, seeing in them not just proof of a shared past, but hope for a shared future. Everything, James. I found everything. And once this gets out, the assembly will never be the same. In the crystal spires below, Zaraval and Nexus 4 faced their interrogators with the calm certainty of those who knew they stood on the right side of history. The truth had been hidden in plain sight for 50,000 years, preserved in the very crystals that formed the heart of Etherian civilization. Now, finally, it was time for both species to remember who they truly were. The human embassy on Centaurite Prime had transformed into a hub of frenetic activity. Dr. Sarah Chen hadn't slept in days, surrounded by holographic projections of ancient symbols and mathematical formulas. The crystal from Nexus 4 had proved to be a treasure trove of information, and a lightning rod for controversy. They're calling for your extradition, Ambassador Patel announced, entering her makeshift laboratory. The Security Council claims you stole classified cultural artifacts. Chen barely looked up from her work. They can't classify the truth, James. Look at this. She gestured to a complex mathematical model floating in the air. Every major human writing system, Sanskrit, Sumerian, Egyptian hieroglyphs, they all share these same quantum harmonic patterns with the first songs. It's not just similarity, it's identity. Which means nothing if we can't prove it conclusively, Paddle reminded her. The assembly still backs the Etherian version of history. Then we'll change that. A new voice joined them as a holographic projection flickered to life. Zaraval's crystalline form shimmered with determination, though the transmission showed signs of heavy encryption. The young ones are already asking questions. The security forces can't arrest everyone. Chen smiled at her Etherian friend, who had been communicating through secured channels since the archive incident. How's Nexus 4? Under house arrest, but still working. More importantly, your findings have reached the Underground Academy. Zaraval's form pulsed with excitement. Dr. Chen, remember those coordinates hidden in the first songs? We've been comparing them with our own star charts. They form a pattern, a map of the ancient civilization's major centers. Chen quickly pulled up her own star charts, overlaying them with the coordinate data. My God, they're not random sites. They're nodes in some kind of network, each one positioned precisely to form a quantum resonance field across the entire sector. Another voice finished. A second hologram appeared. A younger Etherian Chen didn't recognize. I'm Lyra Keth, quantum archaeology specialist. What you've discovered, it changes everything we thought we knew about quantum mechanics. The ancient civilization didn't just share a writing system, Zaraval explained. They built a network of sites that could communicate instantly across vast distances using quantum harmonics. The same principles appear in both their language and their technology. Chen's mind raced with the implications. That's why the mathematical patterns in our languages match. They weren't just writing systems, they were keys to accessing this network. But something happened to it. The sundering. Nexus 4's voice joined them, though no hologram appeared. It's mentioned in our oldest legends, but we thought it was metaphorical. A great catastrophe that shattered the quantum network and scattered our peoples across the stars. Those who became the Aetherians forgot their connection to humanity, rebuilding their civilization on crystals, and proclaimed superiority. And humans forgot too, Chen whispered. We started over, developing new civilizations, but the echoes of that ancient knowledge remained in our languages, in our myths of lost golden ages. Suddenly, alarms blared through the embassy. Security forces, Patel warned. They're demanding entry. Sarah, we're out of time. But Chen was already moving, her hands flying over holographic controls. No, we're just getting started. Zaraval, are you seeing this? If we combine the linguistic patterns with the coordinate data, a hologram shifted ancient symbols aligning with star maps in a complex dance of mathematics and light. As security forces pounded on the embassy doors, something extraordinary happened. The crystal from the archives began to pulse in harmony with the patterns, and every piece of Aetherian technology in the room responded. It's a key, Lyra Keth breathed. The ancient language, it's not just writing. It's a command structure for quantum systems. That's why they encoded it so deeply into both our cultures. They wanted us to find it again, to rebuild. The doors burst open as Aetherian security forces flooded in, but they stopped short at what they saw. The room had become a symphony of light and crystal, ancient symbols dancing in perfect mathematical harmony with their own crystalline forms. Young officers' forms began to pulse in sync with the patterns, responding to something deeper than their training. By order of the Security Council, this research is terminated, the commander announced, but his own form betrayed uncertainty as it resonated with the ancient frequencies. You can't terminate truth. Chen stood her ground, surrounded by the glowing proof of humanity's connection to the Aetherians. Your own bodies are responding to these patterns. They're part of who you are, who we both are. Send it, she told Zaraval. Send it to everyone. Across Centauri Prime, every crystal spire, every quantum communication network, every piece of Aetherian technology suddenly filled with the same patterns. The first songs began to play again after 50,000 years of silence, and this time, both species could finally hear their shared melody. In the chaos that followed, as young Aetherians demanded answers and old power structures began to crumble, Shen looked at the star maps showing the ancient network. Somewhere out there, the ruins of that great civilization waited to be rediscovered. And this time, humans and Aetherians would explore them together, not as superior and inferior, but as children of the same lost golden age, finally finding their way home. The crystal spires of Centauri Prime vibrated with change. 2 weeks after the activation of the ancient quantum patterns, the Aetherian capital had become a battleground, not of weapons, but of ideas. Dr. Sarah Chen watched from the sanctuary of the human embassy as crowds of young Aetherians gathered in the streets below, their crystalline forms pulsing in harmony with the first songs that now played continuously through the city's quantum network. The Security Council has lost control of 3 major districts, Ambassador Paddle reported, studying the latest updates. The younger generation is protecting the research centers. They're calling it the Resonance Revolution. Revolution. Chen shook her head, still analyzing data streams from across the planet. This is more like remembering. Every piece of Aetherian technology carries echoes of the ancient network. Once we showed them how to listen. Her tablet chimed with an encrypted message. Zaraval's hologram appeared, their form shimmering with the new patterns that mark the progressive movement. Dr. Chen, the Underground Academy has gone public. We're broadcasting the truth about our shared heritage on all frequencies. But the Council isn't giving up. As if in response, the embassy's windows darkened as massive security vessels moved into position above the city. High Chancellor Lyssandra's voice boomed across the quantum networks, her tone harsh with authority. Citizens of the eternal crystal, do not be deceived by human lies and corrupted data. Our civilization achieved perfection through isolation and impurity. These claims of ancient connections are an attack on everything we have built. In the name of security and stability, I am implementing the Crystal Silence Protocol. Suddenly, the quantum networks began to shut down. The first songs faltered, and the crowds below cried out as their connection to the ancient patterns wavered. They're trying to cut off access to the network. Lyra Keth's voice crackled through emergency channels. But they don't understand. The patterns are embedded in our very structure. You can't just turn them off. Chen rushed to her equipment, fingers flying over holographic controls. The Council thinks this is just about communication, but it's more fundamental than that. Zaraval, remember what we discovered about the crystalline resonance patterns. They're not just mathematical similarities. Zaraval's transmission fought through the increasing interference. They're expressions of underlying quantum principles that exist in both Aetherian crystal structures and human DNA. The ancient civilization didn't just build a communication network. They encoded it into both our species. Above the city, the security vessels began broadcasting dampening frequencies, trying to suppress the quantum resonances. But something unexpected happened. As the Council tried to impose silence, the crystals that formed the heart of Aetherian civilization began responding to deeper harmonies. Nexus 4's voice, weak but determined, joined the emergency broadcast. The first songs were never just historical records. They were a failsafe, waiting for the day both species remembered who they were. Look at the original equations. The quantum harmonics don't just connect our languages. They're a key to unlocking abilities we've forgotten. In the streets below, young Aetherians began to change. Their crystalline forms shifted in ways not seen for 50,000 years, accessing quantum states that had lain dormant since the Sundering. The security vessel's dampening fields faltered as ancient frequencies rippled through the city. It's happening everywhere, Paddle reported, watching global feeds. Every Aetherian colony, every outpost. Once they hear the patterns, they remember. The Council can't stop it. High Chancellor Lysandra's voice returned, now tinged with desperation. This ends now. Security forces, implement total quantum lockdown. Cut off all networks, all connections. But her transmission cut off as the spire of the High Council itself began to resonate with the ancient frequencies. The security vessels hung motionless in the sky as their Aetherian crews responded to calls older than their civilization. The patterns, Chen breathed, watching in awe as the entire city began to pulse with quantum energies. They're not just proof of our connection. They're a bridge across 50,000 years of separation. The ancient civilization left us a way back to each other. Through the chaos of the transformation, Zaraval's voice rang with clarity. For so long, we thought our crystalline nature made us superior, separate from other species. But these patterns show us the truth. We're all expressions of the same quantum principles, the same cosmic dance. Humanity's DNA and our crystal matrices. They're different solutions to the same equation. As the sun set on Centauri Prime, the city glowed with new light. The first songs echoed through crystal spires and human minds alike, breaking down barriers built over millennia of separation. In the heart of the human embassy, Dr. Sarah Chen looked at the star maps showing the ancient network's nodes, knowing that this was just the beginning. The revolution wasn't just changing Aetherian society. It was rewriting the story of both species. And somewhere out there, in the ruins of that ancient civilization, more secrets waited to be discovered by humans and Aetherians working together, their differences finally recognized not as walls, but as bridges to understanding the deeper harmonies of the universe. 3 months after the Resonance Revolution, the Galactic Assembly Chamber looked vastly different from the place where humanity had once faced mockery and dismissal. The crystalline walls now pulsed with the harmonics of the first songs, and representatives from both species sat together as equals. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the central podium, no longer needing an environmental suit thanks to the quantum harmonization technology rediscovered in the ancient ruins. The network was never truly dormant, she explained to the gathered delegates, her words accompanied by holographic displays showing the sprawling map of quantum connections. It was waiting for both our species to evolve enough to understand it again. The sundering didn't just scatter our ancestors, it forced them to develop along different paths, leading to innovations that the original civilization never imagined. Beside her, Zaraval's crystalline form shimmered with excitement as they activated a new holographic overlay. Humanity developed digital technology and explored the quantum realm through mathematics and machinery. We Etherians evolved crystalline forms that naturally accessed quantum states. Apart, we each had half the equation. Together, the chamber filled with light as they demonstrated the integration of human and Etherian technologies. Where the old assembly had been built on hierarchy and separation, the new chambers utilized quantum harmonics that allowed all species to communicate and coexist without barriers. The ancient civilization didn't fall. Nexus 4, now head of the Reformed Council of Knowledge, added. It transformed itself, seeding the galaxy with different expressions of its wisdom, knowing that one day we would find each other again and create something even greater. Former High Chancellor Lysandra, her form now showing the new resonance patterns of acceptance, stepped forward. I speak for the old guard when I say we were wrong. Our fear of losing power blinded us to the true strength that comes from unity. The young ones showed us a better way. In the 3 months since the revolution, the changes had rippled across the galaxy. Each new archaeological site unlocked more secrets of the ancient quantum network. Human DNA and Etherian crystal matrices, once thought incompatible, proved to be different expressions of the same underlying quantum principles. The technology that allowed them to share environments was just the beginning. But the greatest discovery wasn't the technology, Ambassador Patel addressed the assembly. It was the message encoded in the very structure of the network, the truth that diversity isn't a weakness to be overcome, but a strength to be celebrated. Chen nodded, looking out at the chamber where humans and Etherians now worked side by side with other species who had begun to discover their own connections to the ancient civilization. The first songs weren't just about our past. They were about our future. Each species that joins the assembly brings new insights, new ways of understanding the quantum harmonies that connect all life. Lyra Keth, leading a team of human and Etherian scientists, projected their latest findings. We've identified similar patterns in the languages and technologies of other species. The network extends far beyond what we initially thought. The ancient civilization wasn't just about humans and Etherians, it was preparing the galaxy for a renaissance of connection. Which brings us to our proposal. Chen continued, her voice carrying the weight of possibility. The old assembly was built on the idea of some species guiding others. We propose a new model, based on the principles we've rediscovered. Not a hierarchy, but a harmony, each civilization contributing its unique resonance to a greater whole. The chamber erupted in discussions as representatives from across the galaxy recognized echoes of the quantum patterns in their own cultural memories. The first songs, now playing throughout the network, seemed to take on new depths as more voices joined the ancient harmony. There will be challenges ahead, Zaraval acknowledged. Some fear change, even positive change. But we've proven that evolution doesn't mean losing who you are. It means becoming more fully yourself while recognizing your connection to everything else. As the assembly voted to adopt the new framework, Chen looked out at the stars visible through the crystal walls. Somewhere out there, more ruins waited to be discovered, more lost knowledge to be reclaimed. But the greatest discovery had already been made. The understanding that separation was an illusion, and that the future belonged to those who could harmonize their differences into something greater than the sum of their parts. The first songs echoed through the quantum network, carrying their message to every corner of the galaxy. The age of isolation was over. A new civilization was rising, built not on the suppression of difference, but on the celebration of diversity. And this time, It would not be sundered by fear or pride, for it carried within its very structure the lesson learned at such great cost, that the truest strength comes not from standing alone, but from standing together, each voice contributing to an endless symphony of possibility.